Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Happy Friday, everybody. Global people, two chaps, many cultures, and a weirdo that is dancing to music you can't hear anymore. All right.
Well, you can have music in your ears. Who knows? We don't know what you're listening to. You could be completely ignoring us.
Yeah, and it's definitely not 80s music. But that's something for another show. All right. What are we here for today, Brett? This is our 50th episode. Who would have thunk?
Who'd have thunk it? 50 episodes. That's actually quite a milestone in my favourite sport, cricket. It's called a half century and is celebrated as a journey, partway mark on the journey to a century, a 100. But 50 is a landmark. It's quite an accomplishment, and I'm feeling accomplished. 50 episodes. Probably, if you estimate at least 30 minutes on each episode, 25, and then we've gone longer in many of them, so 25 to 30 hours of content just put out there. Some of it just us two guys bloviating at each other and pretending we know what we're talking about. The other most important parts are the wonderful guests we've had, and we want to thank them. And there's many more to come, many more waiting in the green room. We've got the Two Chaps Tower busily humming with the thousands of interns dialing for wonderful guests and scheduling them. So Stay tuned.
And asking for your patience, because I know you're knocking on our doors and you're rattling at the gates to be let in. And we'll make sure that everybody gets a fair shake. All right. But 50, it's a number. Yeah, that's not bad. Not bad. Mm-hmm. Considering that I didn't expect it to go that well, to be honest. I'm surprising myself.
You're assuming it is going well.
Yes, I am. And I stick to that. I continue to assume that, because it is. I make it so. Oh man,
it's 50. Fun. It is fun. If nobody else is having fun, at least we are, and that's perfect. So
wasn't that the premise to begin with?
It was, yeah. It's just for us, yeah, absolutely. Which is a little bit to do with each other's topics. We had to explore why we would do this. What is it about? What it is in our mindset that drives us to do this kind of things, act this certain way, be who we are, and how we're built. Which is an interesting topic to discuss, and a surprising topic for many of us that do this work when we're confronted with clients that think we're showing up to teach them about the culture they might be heading into and engaging with and having to manage people in. And then we show up and we start to do, even though, again, as from yesterday's topic, we realize we're not psychologists, but we do get into a little bit of this kind of self-reflection for our clients so that they can identify what drives them. And there's, I guess everybody uses different processes. What do you do, my good man, to start that conversation off with a client?
Putting me on the spot and revealing my trade secrets.
I think don't tell anybody. If you're listening to this, don't tell anybody.
Now, the revelation came for me rather late in my practice. So in the beginning, I thought, this is what I was here for. This is what I've been trained to do, is to educate people about the cultures that they will be entering for work and other activities in life as they transition from one into another culture. My job was to prepare them for the next host culture, so to say. And I came to the realization later on during my practice, maybe years after, I couldn't tell you when that was, when I recognized, this is all fine and dandy, and I can hopefully teach you quite a bit about what it is you'll need to pay attention to in your host culture. However, before you can actually do that, you dear client, may want to become aware of what is your own culture, who is you, and what makes you be the way you are, and what drives your behaviors. And that's why we called it know thyself, right? Like a biblical commandment. Before you try understanding the other, it might behoove you to become aware of who you are. And it's surprising how many of us, including myself, don't always do that or cannot tell you on the spot who they are. And the self-discovery is often the richer part of our work, at least in my practice, the richer part of my work. So today, and I sincerely hope the gentleman's not watching, I'm not going to reveal any names or company identification. So I'm doing a training right now. I was contracted to a cultural training. That's what it was billed as, for a German moving to Austria. And my initial reaction was, interesting that the company would authorize that, given that most German organizations would expect there not to be a huge culture shift going from one German-speaking country into another one. And the client himself was a little bit surprised to be engaging with me as well. And it turns out that I'm not there, and this I knew this going into this engagement, that I'm not there to tell him much about Austria. Sure, I can give him a few pointers that he may have missed until now, but I'm here to help him discover who he is, what his leadership preferences are, how he would like to lead his team, how he in the relationship with his spouse and his family is affecting the move and the transition from one location into another. So all of a sudden, we're not talking too much about the destination culture. We're talking about the individual, what makes that person tick, how does he like to do things, and how may it be different from the way his new team does. But it's the at the core of the work is self-discovery. Now add to that, this individual is in a leadership position. So he comes into this new job as the new country head for his company. So you can expect a person of this seniority and this professional experience to have been around the block of leadership a little bit, and they know a thing or two about this. And yet, in our second session that we had today, he opened up. It was this moment where a good facilitator, and I'm sure, Brett, you had those moments yourself, when you recognize, so now I cracked the nut. Now the resistance went down, and now they trust me to show them a side of their professional life that they were not aware of before. So I become the person holding up the mirror, so to say, or not the phone, but something that mirrors. I'm holding up a mirror to them and allowing them to look at things within themselves that they have successfully hidden from themselves for a while. And now they're uncovering it in that safe space of what was called training. And it turns out to be a very intimate one-on-one leadership coaching experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And what for me, a lot of times it's an aha moment for the participant who can reflect on past experience, even domestically, working with somebody from another culture, where they can recognize where those differences have frustrated them or given them joy too, right? There's a point where they can say, okay, yeah, so I have these values and these beliefs. This informs how I responded in that particular setting. And then we can debrief that in a retroactive way to then think forward and say, well, this is going to happen more often. Of course, you're about to engage or lead in another culture where a lot of the other people are going to be different to you in this similar way. And then when we talk about the possible contrast and the possible working style preferences for the culture you're going to, think of those past experiences and see how you can apply the knowledge you already have. So what I'm kind of affirming, what I'm trying to do is affirm the knowledge and the understanding and the abilities that the person already has, and say, this is not skills that I particularly teaching you, I'm just making you aware and inspiring you to leverage them. And that's what I find fascinating. And when you do that, you're really giving them you're not teaching them. It's not a lecture. It's not something where sit down, shut up, you don't know what you're talking about, I'm here to take you to school. It's about, I'm encouraging you to recognize in yourself that you've got these skills, and all you have to do is just now, maybe switch them up a little bit.
Well, you asked me earlier, how do I do that? And I think we both operate in a similar way. I've learned to become comfortable in asking people questions that they may not always ask themselves out loud. And even with in this case, this is an individual who's quite educated and fairly high up the food chain in this organization, and I'm an outside contractor. He didn't know me before, so I'm this person that yet has to build trust and rapport with this coachee or with this training participant. So asking the pointed questions that lead to self-discovery, that lead to that reflection and extracting knowledge that they already have, that is something you don't get permission to do right away, right? That you need to establish trust and rapport first. So
maybe Christian is frozen here. You there, mate? No. Well, we've lost Christian. He'll be back in a minute. But I just want to build on what Christian's saying there. One of the impactful questions that I start out with is actually saying to people who are contemplating, or not contemplating, but actually planning ahead for a move overseas, is to actually ask and reflect on them between themselves, if it's a couple, or themselves, if it's a single person, is to actually why they're doing it. Why are they actually taking on this particular challenge? What is brought them to decide they're going to take the opportunity and the offer of their company to send them overseas? And many of these things then ask for some reflective, thoughtful considerations. And many times what happens is that the people just basically say, well, I hadn't thought of it. Now, and very rarely does it come down to money. Very rarely does someone say, I'm just going to do this for the money. A lot of times it's like, I see this as an opportunity for adventure and experiencing a different culture, a different lifestyle outside of my own culture, and learning to lead in a more global setting will give me the skills and the abilities to further my career and establish myself as somebody who is, there he is, he's back.
I pulled a trick on you. It was the internet wizards figuring out how to one-up you. I'm sorry, technology issues. I hope you finished my sentence.
Yeah, no, I was going into the realm of actually even the initial question of building that trust, right, is asking the people, or building an atmosphere where you're curious about why they're actually considering doing this international move. What is it about it that they've responded to? And usually the answers are, well, I'm looking for new opportunities. I want to experience a different lifestyle. I want to learn how to be a better global leader and be able to have these skill sets or develop the skills I've already have. And yeah, we're back. And so that initial question, that overarching question, right at the start, where how I set up the tone of the going forward, is that I'm here curious about your reasons. I'm here about what is it about you that makes you tick, that's made that you've responded to this opportunity. And then that really starts them to think about, why did I say yes to this?
Right.
And so you then get them to, you it's kind of a bit of a trick, but you're getting them to discover it for themselves. Yeah.
I sometimes ask clients, hey, when's the last time you've been confronted with a change of scenery, so to say? It may have not been a change of cultures or national location, but you may have changed divisions within your organization, or you may have gotten a new boss. How did you experience that change? What was it that you struggled most with, or that was easiest for you? So there's various ways to trigger people's memories of how they've experienced this type of change in a similar way before, and help them remember their success strategies in doing that. And just like you said before, people have had success in various forms and shapes in their lives. Maybe not always in the professional realm. However, once they're sent on an international assignment or a global project, then I think it's safe to assume that they've been successful in their job before. So helping them uncover the success patterns that they've built for themselves and deconstructing them. This is what you do to get from this point to that point, and that's a successful positive outcome. So how can you apply that strategy to another field of your work or in this new project that you're entering? So there's so many ways an experienced coach can help clients unearth the resources that they have inside and may not be consciously aware of them yet. And I think that's the beauty of the work. It's not so much hey, I come in here as the expert, I'm going to teach you, I'm going to take you to school, sit down and take notes. That is, yeah, not as sustainable. I think it won't have the same long lasting effects.
No, I've been on the receiving end of that type of approach, and I tune out pretty quick. So it's, I'm really, if I can't share what, if my experience doesn't apply to what I'm learning, then I'm kind of out of it, right? And
yeah.
There is the kind of the more, I guess it was a more negative side of it, is to say, if you've had these experiences before and it's actually caused you pain, it's caused you, what have you done in the past that you could possibly not do again, not repeat the same mistakes, right? That definition of madness of doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And this happened to me the other day where I'm working with a client in a different part of the US who was brought up in another part of the US, where when we started to talk about the adjustment phase of and managing through and engaging with a new professional setting and social setting, they said, hell, I had this when I moved from wherever it was, from one side of the country to the other, because it can be such a discombobulating experience that they recognized it, said, okay, here's a couple of things. I probably wouldn't do that again. Now I'm moving overseas because it didn't work last time. So,
right.
And now we can actually give them alternatives to say, well, this has been proven to be possibly a more positive approach.
Now, does it happen with your clients once in a while that you find that there's a resistance for them to dig deep inside of themselves, that they are either reluctant to that self-discovery process, or that they push back, that they say, well, no, I got this, and this is personal, and I don't want to talk about this, or this is none of your business? So does that ever happen to you, that the more senior or the more experienced a professional is, that they sometimes let you know how much they think they know, and therefore are a bit walled up?
Aloof. Yeah. It's only happened very rarely, and I would say it's happened more so with less experienced people. I think that more experienced people are actually, once you start opening up these conversations, they've got to a position in their life professionally that they've realized that they need to learn. The older you get, the more the more what you don't know, and so they tend to be more open to me. I don't, maybe one or two, but after hundreds and hundreds, it's really, the data is pretty insignificant. I think I would be more, I'm always more concerned when I turn up and somebody says, well, I'm kind of just here ticking the box. I feel great. I'm positive. I'm confident. I know, I've got a Japanese friend. I know exactly what these people like. Or I've got another person I know from the culture I'm going to. I'm good. That has happened very rarely, but sometimes that's like, and it's not their fault. This is actually people that are confident. They're also being very positive. They're trying to be positive, and they're trying to look at the opportunity through a really, really positive lens, rose-colored glasses. So sometimes your job is to bring them down off the ladder. You're holding on to their bootlaces and just saying, let's just pause, and let's just pause and have a look. and it's very rare that you can't connect the dots to something they've experienced in their life that, as you say, has caused them some discomfort when they've moved and been uncomfortable in the past. It's very rare you don't have something to tie there. But yeah, I mean, insignificant, I would say, the amount of times that's happened.
And I'm starting to repeat myself here. However, I think anyone who wants to be successful, whether they do the work that you and I do, so there's people watching us, and we see that in the emails that we get, that there are people that are starting out in our field that seem to be interested in what we do here with Two Chaps. But it doesn't really matter if you're going into our arena or if you're in some other professional field. The older I get and the more experience I get in my work, I recognize that being able to ask the highest quality questions is the winning formula. I used to be a fairly overly confident young professional, and I made blanket statements that either ended in a full stop if I was being gracious, or in an exclamation point when I was thinking I needed to be very assertive. And I found that sentences that end in a question mark sometimes yield the more interesting response, and they will trigger people to find better solutions. Because if I make blanket statements, if I say this is what it's going to be, and this is how you need to learn, and this is what you need to know, and that's the next thing you should be doing, then I don't allow for variance, because I'm giving instructions almost. However, if I can phrase that in questions in a way that the client comes up with their own answer. So how would you go about this now? Now that you've learned this, what do you think would be the next step for you? And what do you think would be the most efficient way to reach goal XYZ? So they need to come up with the answer. They need to get creative in their field, so they don't rely on me telling them what to do. So the high quality questions to me seem to be a winning formula in that kind of consulting engagement.
Yeah. And many of the tools we use, assessment tools that we may bring to the table to say this is a way of understanding the other culture, is also a way of starting the conversation for the participant, because they would normally take the assessment and they get some kind of framework or measurement of, from the questions that they've answered in terms of a survey or something like that, that they get to identify what perhaps there's a general indication of what their general style might be. So if they're direct and they're going to a hiker, this is a good way to start the conversation. So some of these assessments do this job for us, and they're a great way of opening and starting the conversation that is separate away from us coming in there as a consultant and saying, sit down, be quiet, I'm going to tell you what you're like. You're letting them do the self-discovery again in that. So, this is where, again, assessment tools, although not absolutes, can be very great starting points to not self-discovery, but also then transitioning into the discovery of others. Yeah.
So tell me, Brett, what am I like?
Yeah, interesting. Let me send you a survey, and you can.
I thought you've read me in and out.
I've got a whole bag of them. Well,
help me find myself.
Help you find yourself. Look in the mirror. Just go and look in the mirror, dude. Yeah. Okay. I mean, and it's in the afternoon. You've obviously showered. You've coiffed your hair. You've got your beard, the beard action going quite well, and you've cleaned your glasses, and everything's good. I mean, this could be different if it was 6 a.m.
Yeah, but in this case today, it was 6 a.m. and I looked the exact same way because Germany, Austria, remember, different time zone.
Right. You're up and at it. Yeah.
So we'd like to hear from you. What are your favorite processes to allow your clients to discover themselves? What do you do? Do you have games? Do you have certain question frameworks? Do you have, I don't know. Tell us. We'd like to learn from you.
Absolutely. This would be very interesting. 50 episodes. And on the day, celebration is the wrong word, the commemoration of 9/11, the attacks in the US, in which the country in which we sit at this very moment is being recognised around the country. And of course, we're almost 20 years. Next year is a 20-year anniversary. No, 2 years is a 20-year anniversary. No, next year is a 20-year anniversary. Wow. So quite a bit away, but. Again, that's an example where people were taken completely out of their comfort zone, and there's a lot of reflection in this particular case where people are reflecting where they were, what they were doing, who they were with in this particular setting, and how the society and the culture managed to kind of manage through it and come out of it. So.
Well, that's actually a whole nother episode built into this episode, but I'm willing to go there, Brett.
Yeah.
I think there's some self-reflection that happened for an entire society, for an entire country like the United States. Who are we as a country? And if the country looks at itself right now in the mirror, it will recognize that it is a different country than it was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And yes, a singular event like 9/11 contributed to that. And there's a few other events that added to that over the years, but it's interesting because I've gotten to know this country in the last century, and looking at it now, there's change that happened. So that doesn't only happen to individuals, it happens to groups of people. So the self-discovery process may be something that you don't only do once, you may do that multiple times throughout your life, and depending on your current situation, it might give you different answers. Where were you today 19 years ago? Remember what you did?
Far from where I am now. I basically was only a couple of miles, and we just moved house once, so we're not too far away. But I was sitting in the morning. I guess I was home preparing my day, and the first indication was my wife calling and saying, "Just turn the TV on." And then that was it. And where we lived there, we actually overlooked O'Hare Airport. We could see the airport and all activities that were going on. So that was kind of eerie to see jets in the air and things like that. It was a strange time, interesting. To the extent that my wife, who had just the day before done her citizenship ceremony to become a citizen of the US, the day before, and we'd had this wonderful day of celebration after that, and she was on a high. It was a long journey for her, a much longer, much more intense journey than it was for me, and so it was impactful to have that happen the next day. So two completely different days in that 48-hour period where it was the very highest of highs and then the almost devastation of the lows. So it was impactful. So yeah, I think that's a great thing. Somebody who had, and I'm trying to have respectful conversations on social media are hard these days, but somebody had not accused, I think accused is a bad word, but had indicated that I probably have no idea what it's like to love this country because I wasn't born here. Therefore, I had no right to comment on it. I would argue, and it's been proven for many out of the experience of working with many of my clients, once they've left this country, even as American citizens, with a deep love for it, come back with even a deeper love for it, but also a more critical eye on it, which is sometimes interpreted as lack of love or a diminishment of that love of country. And I think if you love your country enough, if you love the place that you live enough, and you love the people around you enough, you should question it every day, and you should be critical of it, and that should be part of. I hate the word patriotism, really, but but that should be part of patriotism. So getting it and really pushing against the status quo and saying there are things that are broken here. It's a great country. Every country is great in its own way, but there are things that are broken differently in different countries. And if as a citizen you're not willing to stand up and look yourself and everybody else in the eye and say, this is not right, we need to fix it, then you're you're not doing yourself justice or
And
anybody.
I mean, if you live in a partnership with a loved one, whether it's your spouse or whatever the relationship is, if you have a long-term committed relationship with somebody, there will be days or moments when you won't have those rosy glasses on, where you will feel anger, frustration, or some other non-supportive feeling towards your partner that you are in love with. And I think that is part of of the genesis of any type of relationship. So questioning somebody's love for country just because we take a more nuanced and sometimes critical view on ourselves, that does not diminish the affection towards, or the emotional bond to such an abstract thing as a country. It's we're not loving 340 million people. We're loving the idea of a country, right? So it's a complex relationship that, again, requires some introspection, that requires knowing who am I, and who am I in relation to this abstract concept of country and nation and society or group of which I am a part. So in order to define that relationship, you got to love yourself first, or know yourself enough to understand what is the relationship to either another person, or to a company, a group of people, a society that you're part of, a family, whatever the group that you belong to. Without knowing yourself first, it'll be hard to define what the relationship to the other is.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. A complicated and wonderful process of self-discovery, and it's not always easy, but it can be very impactful and enlightening. That's the final word, I guess. Not, well, I don't want that. I don't have to have the final word, but I'm just saying.
You just listen to Brett's final words for this week. So I will get a text from his wife later saying, no, he kept talking.
That's right. Yes. And but what was that guy used to say? Now you know the rest of the story. Well, yeah, we haven't given you half the story. There's plenty more to dig into. And as you said, there's probably a whole other episode in what we're talking about, and we could probably invite somebody. And if you're that somebody who is a lot smarter than us to talk about this, then we are happy to have you along. Please come and join us.
Yes. Prove that we are not the smartest people.
That's right. That's
like,
right.
I need reminding of that. But all right, bring it on. Bring it on.
Every day I look in the mirror and say, yeah, just pulling everybody's leg, dude. That's what I say.
So wherever in the world you are, happy Friday, maybe almost happy Saturday because you crossed over to the dateline. In either case, have a wonderful weekend. 50th episode, we're done. This is in the can, and we'll see you again on Monday for episode 51.
Wonderful. See you guys. Bye.